His courage fled, and he submitted, as he always had. He told himself he was too small to fight back. Every night before he went to sleep, Finch would think about the day he was tall and his gangly arms and legs had filled out with muscle. Then he would take on the Duke and never be hurt again. "He can't live forever, you know," Cyril pointed out. Finch shrugged, thinking of the story he had studied in school last term from the Greek historian Herodotus, which included the proverb, "Whom the gods love dies young." If that were true, the Duke of Sommersby would live to be 1,000 years old. When he said nothing, his brother added, "I will be the next Duke, Finch. He won't be around to beat us any more." He shook his head sadly as he began cleaning his brush, wishing it were only his grandfather's beatings he had to suffer. He knew Cyril suffered those just as Finch did, when they didn't give the right answer to a question the Duke asked, or they were too slow in their response. The butler appeared. "Lord Cyril, His Grace, awaits you in the library. He says you are to discuss King Lear with him." Cyril said goodbye and left with the butler, his head hanging, the life seemingly sucked from him as his shoulders sank. Finch finished cleaning his brushes and set them aside. He left the painting on the easel so that it could dry. He had stacks of completed canvases in his room. Despite what Cyril said, he doubted anyone would ever want his work. Even his own mother didn't. She would humour him upon occasion, telling him a piece was nice, but she never wanted to hang any of them in her rooms. It was something that angered him. Shouldn't a mother be proud and want to display a landscape painted by her son? He sighed, trying hard not to let his feelings get hurt. Perhaps his mother didn't like what he painted. Logically, he could understand, and even accept that. What he couldn't understand was why she had never protected him. Did she have an inkling of what went on behind closed doors at Somerville? If she did, she had ignored it, sacrificing his innocence, just so she could have a roof over her head. He had heard Mamma say many times that if not for her father-in-law, she and her boys would have had nowhere to go after they returned to England from India. He supposed Sommersby had taken them in when he did because Cyril had suddenly become the heir apparent. Not only had their father been killed in an accident, but the uncle they had never met had been shot and killed in a duel days before his brother's death. Suddenly, the Duke of Sommersby, who'd had both an heir and a spare, now had only a grandson who would inherit the dukedom one day. Finch knew that was why they had been given a place to live. He had also heard over the years, thanks to eavesdropping, what the duel had been about, and shared that knowledge with Cyril. Finch hadn't quite understood what a mistress was, much less why two men would turn to guns over one. But Cyril had clarified the situation for him, explaining about what went on between a man and a woman, and how many men of the temps engaged in affairs. It disgusted Finch. He never planned to have a mistress. In fact, he didn't even want to have a wife. He was never going to be the Duke and be required to provide an heir. No. Finch would go off to the army and spend his days far away from Somerville. Perhaps he would be sent to India, where he had been born and his father had served. Maybe if he were halfway around the world he could forget about everything that had been done to him. He returned to his bedchamber, his belly growing queasy, knowing he would be summoned to the Duke's side within the next hour or so once Sommersby had finished quizzing Cyril. He settled himself in the window seat, a copy of Defoe's Robinson Crusoe nestled in his lap. It was the latest assignment from the Duke and one Finch actually had enjoyed reading. It was packed with adventures, unlike the dry sermons and boring histories he sometimes was required to read. He wondered if he and the Duke would actually discuss any of the book.